I can't really start with you here. Oh my god. Ah! All done? Okay. Alright, so here are my tiers. Top tier is Absolute Queen. This Zelda is amazing. She has great character, full story arc, drives the plot forward, has complete agency, just like an all-around fantastic and amazing character who we should absolutely treasure and cherish and respect in this household. Second tier, agency in my Zelda, it's more likely than you think. These Zeldas have character agency and they serve a role in the story, but there's some sort of like major flaw that keeps them from being absolute top tier. It could be that they serve a really minor role or that they're not very fleshed out, but they're still like good characters, and I still think that they are good overall. Third tier, at least I still have my personality. This is where things start going downhill. These Zeldas are like they're okay, but it's more that they have like a really good like personality and fleshed out character, but they don't really have agency in the story, which is kind of a major like negative to have for a main character that the game is named after. There's something good there. It's just that they're not like good characters, you know. Fourth tier, there was an attempt. This is like the drop-off point where the Zeldas just start getting like, I would call them all from this point forward bad, but bad to different degrees. And there was an attempt tier is like, they're not good characters, they don't have good personalities, they don't have much agency, but at least they like, there was something, they tried to like do something with them so that they're not just literally plot devices or damsels. So like, but still, they're not good. Fifth tier, permission to do exactly one thing. It says it on the tin. These Zeldas literally do one thing, but at least they aren't, like, non-existent. Like, they do something. That's nice. But can you do, like, a little bit more with them, please? And then the final tier, a failure for feminism. These Zeldas aren't even characters. They're literally just plot devices. They exist for Link to have a reason to quest. Absolutely terrible. Just like, oh my god. You know, a goal for Link to reach at the end and not a person in themselves. So I'm going to go through each of the Zelda iterations in chronological order of release. And starting with the very first Legend of Zelda, you're probably thinking, like, this was the very first game, so of course she doesn't really have a personality. She's probably a failure for feminism. And surprisingly, the very first Zelda is actually in permission to do exactly one thing tier. This sounds like the bar could not possibly be lower, but I am genuinely, like, she actually did something. She did something in the story. That's amazing. But yeah, the first Zelda game has like almost no story at all. The story is literally like 2 paragraphs in the instruction manual. It's just, Zelda's been kidnapped, go save her, go beat Ganon and save her. But the one other piece of the story in the original Zelda is that before Zelda was captured, Ganon was trying to gather the Triforce to get ultimate power, and she is the one who broke the Triforce of Wisdom into 8 pieces and scattered them across Hyrule so that Ganon couldn't get his hands on it. So she actually did exactly one thing in the story, which is like, that's great. Good for you. Still not a good character, still terrible, but for like the 1980s, like, that's nice. The very next Zelda game, though, Zelda 2 Adventure of Link, major step down. It's kind of depressing that from the very first iteration of Zelda, the next one is even worse. But this Zelda is literally the worst Zelda, like, out of all of them. It's impossible to get any worse than this, and it's kind of, like, viscerally upsetting. Basically, in Zelda 2, what happens is the same Link from the original Legend of Zelda turns 16, and he learns from Impa that the Legend of Zelda is actually not referring to the Zelda from the first game, but referring to this other Zelda, who's been in a deep slumber for who knows how long. It could have been like 20 years, it could have been a century, it's never really clear, but basically what happened is that the King of Hyrule died, and his successor, the Prince of Hyrule, wants to get his hands on the Triforce, but he only knows where one of the pieces is, and this Zelda knew where the other piece was but wouldn't tell him, and so he sent an evil wizard to like torture her and get the location of the Triforce from her, and she wouldn't tell, and so the wizard cast a curse on her to put her into a deep sleep for all eternity. And then the prince was heartbroken that he sent this wizard to torment his sister, and then feels bad, and so he establishes the Legend of Zelda, which is that every princess of Hyrule from now on shall be named Zelda in honor of this Zelda who he essentially killed. It's like, oh, that's the origin of the Legend of Zelda? And then at the very end of the game, she wakes up after having been asleep for who knows how long. Her family is dead, her kingdom is in ruins, and the first thing she does is she wakes up and she makes out with the first guy that she lays her eyes on. It's like, oh my god, could you possibly make a single worse female character? I don't think so. The one nice thing about her is that it is physically impossible to get worse than this, so that's great! The next Zelda is A Link to the Past Zelda, which is a step up. That's not really saying much, but she is a step up. And I would put her in the there was an attempt tier. Because in A Link to the Past, she actually, like, does some stuff, and she sort of has more of a role in the story. Not by much, but there definitely was an attempt. I don't think she was good, but, like, at the start, she's been captured, and Link has to rescue her, but then she's the one who leads into the sanctuary, and, kind of, like, kickstarts Link's adventure. She's the one who calls to Link psychically for help in the first place too. He wouldn't know to go save her if it wasn't for her. So like, she does something, and then at the end, well, she's damseled, like, obviously, which isn't good. But then at the end, when after she's been rescued, she and the other maidens are the ones who seal Ganondorf. Or Ganon. So like, she kind of like is more of something than the other two, but still not great, you know? Oh boy. Oh boy, here we go. The next Zelda, chronologically, is the Ocarina of Time Zelda. And I gotta be careful here because I have a lot to say about this Zelda, and I will gush uncontrollably about her, but she is legitimately absolute queen. Ocarina of Time Zelda is an absolute queen. I love her. She's incredible. I think that she is severely underestimated and severely misunderstood. As a lot of people, what you remember of this Zelda is that near the end of the game, she's captured by Ganondorf. And, like, yes, that is part of what happens, but narrowing her down to just that one instance eradicates, like, all of her character agency and, like, her entire role within the story and how actually, like, good of a character she is. One thing about Ocarina of Time is that it's only the 4th Zelda game, I think, and they're still kind of getting their footing, and there wasn't, like, a lot of story. Like, if you compare Ocarina of Time to Skyward Sword has a much, like, bigger and more sweeping narrative. There's a lot more dialogue. There's a lot of stuff going on. Ocarina of Time tells a very epic story, but it's very succinct. Almost every single character who's important only really gets to talk to Link, like, a couple of times, if you think about it. Like, Darunia, Ruto, basically, you have your first interaction with them where they express that they need help in some way. Their second interaction is after you've helped them and they thank you, and then their third interaction is when you meet them as an adult and they awaken as a sage and they kind of become integral to the story. So there really isn't much character growth or character depth for anyone in this story because it's a smaller scope narrative. In terms of the game, it's huge, but in terms of the actual narrative, it's pretty small compared to other Zelda games. And Zelda herself has, like, one of the biggest roles in the story. So even though compared to other Zeldas, her role is smaller, compared to everyone in Ocarina of Time, she's actually, like, a major player. She's incredibly important. One thing that people really don't seem to grasp here is that without Zelda, Link literally couldn't do anything. His adventure would be over before it even started, because she's the one who, as soon as you leave Kokiri Forest and go to Hyrule Castle, she's the one who lets you in. She's the one who tells you what's going on. She's the one who tells you that Ganondorf is the bad guy. She can tell because she's prophetic. She has prophetic visions. She drives you to gather the spiritual stones. She tells you where to go. She gives you Impa gives you Zelda's lullaby, but she's the one who tells Impa to give it to you. Without Zelda there at the start to get Link his start, Link could not have done anything. He would have, his adventure would be over before it even started. And then going forward from that, she has a full character arc within the story it's underplayed, but it's there, where she is a young and naive child who thinks that the two of them as children can save Hyrule by gathering the stones and doing this. And her naivete is what causes Ganondorf to rise to power. And when you meet her again as an adult, she is grappling with the fact that this is her fault, and she is doing everything that she can to make it right. And one of the most amazing things about her is that when she's a child and she escapes Hyrule, they have to go into hiding. Impa and Zelda have to go into hiding because Ganondorf is looking for her. And Zelda could very well have just stayed in hiding and would have been safe, but she chooses to go into disguise as Sheik and play a major and active role in the restoration of Hyrule. She seeks out Link and aids him at every turn, and she could have completely just stayed hidden and stayed safe and let Hyrule collapse, but she, in her own strength of character, decides to go back and help her kingdom and help her people and actually play an active role in defeating Ganondorf, which is kind of a big deal. It's incredible. I genuinely think that it's so brave and courageous and intriguing. Part of the story is she does get captured. What a lot of people don't really understand or seem to ignore about that is that she is aware that Ganondorf is looking for her, and that if she reveals herself, Ganondorf will find her. And so at the end, when she reveals herself to Link in order to tell him her plan and reveal what she has lined up in order to defeat Ganondorf, she's putting herself in explicit danger, and she knows it. And then she gets found and captured, and it's her mistake. Yes, she still is captured, and that's not the best, but she knew the stakes, and she revealed herself to Link in order to be honest with him, which is again, this isn't just a Zelda getting captured by Ganondorf out of the blue. This is her having been an active player through the story the entire time, and then putting herself in active danger, and then paying the consequences for it, which is hello, that's different. Then at the end, you beat Ganondorf, and he tears the castle down on top of you to try and kill you and Zelda is the one who helps Link escape. She's the only reason Link survives until the end. And then after that, when Ganondorf turns into Ganon, she's the one who does everything. Link obviously has to fight Ganon with the sword, but she seals him with her light magic in order for Link to deal the final blow. When Link deals the final blow, she is the one who commands the sages to seal Ganon in the Sacred Realm. This was her plan. She's the one who beats Ganon. It's I don't really understand how people don't totally recognize how good of a character she is in this story. She's legitimately incredible. I don't know how to express my thoughts on this perfectly clearly because there has been so much debate over this, but the fact that Zelda chooses to disguise herself as Sheik, who uses male pronouns and is a male character in the story, a lot of people say oh, she just chose that to make it easier for her to hide from Ganondorf, but she could have, if she wanted to go into disguise, she could have chosen any sort of a personality to disguise herself as, but she chooses a male disguise, which is immediately casts her in the role of being subtextually LGBTQIA+. She could be gender fluid. It could be some sort of a trans allegory. It's trying to erase that from the story by saying that it's just convenient for her kind of really underplays the depth and intrigue of her character as an LGBTQIA+ character in the 90s. Even if you don't personally agree with the reading is there. You can't just say that it isn't. It's legitimately a valid reading to have of her character. So again, she's an absolute queen. She's an incredible character, and I genuinely love her. Even though I don't think that she's as in-depth as other Zeldas, I think that she's genuinely one of the best. I'm sorry, I can't totally control myself when I start talking about this. I love Princess Zelda, and I have a lot of opinions, so I apologize for that, but let's move on. The next Zelda I want to talk about literally is on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, and it's genuinely so depressing because coming after Ocarina of Time, you have Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, and this Zelda is a complete failure for feminism. I would put her above the Adventure of Link Zelda because she isn't like the most non-existent character who has no realistic existence at all, but her entire thing is basically just she gets kidnapped by Twin Rova in order to try and resurrect Ganon, and then you save her, and that's kind of it. And she didn't even need to be in these games at all because Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons take place in different lands. They take place in Labrina, and Holodrum, which are different from Hyrule, and so Zelda doesn't really need to be here, and the only reason that she's even here is because when you connect the two games with the Game Boy cable, you unlock the secondary story, and like they were like, let's tie this in, and it's kind of like, why? There is something to mention here, which is that the Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons Zelda is technically the same Zelda as the A Link to the Past Zelda, which I am still going to keep her separate for one specific reason, which is that I'm going to kind of lump in all of the sequel Zeldas with her, because Zelda games kind of have this issue where every time there is a Zelda game that has a sequel, Zelda in the sequel is absolutely terrible. It's true for everyone. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. Even like Majora's Mask, at least Zelda isn't captured in that game, but her only purpose in that story at all is just to give Link the Song of Time. Like, she doesn't really serve a purpose. Same thing with Phantom Hourglass, that Zelda is immediately damseled and is just a damsel for the entire story. A Link to the Past Zelda in Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons is just a damsel. Every Zelda game that has like a sequel that uses the same Zelda, that Zelda is terrible. Which I'm going to talk about that a little bit more when I get to Breath of the Wild, but fingers crossed for that game. The next Zelda on the list is the Four Swords and Four Swords Adventure Zelda, who is even worse than the Oracle of Ages one. Like, in Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, Zelda doesn't really show up until the ending, but at least before the linked ending, she kind of is like allowed to like do something. She doesn't really do anything, but she visits the other kingdoms, and you can get little photographs of her visiting and like hanging out with Link, and it's kind of cute. So like there's something there. But the Four Swords and Four Swords Adventure Zelda are literally at the very start of the game immediately captured, and then the end of the game is yet to rescue them. She's just terrible. Still better than the Zelda 2 Zelda, but there's nothing here. And I know that Four Swords and Four Swords Adventures are technically two different Zeldas, but they're like, they serve the exact same purpose in the story, so I'm just mushing them together. They're the same. They're terrible. Let's move on. The next Zelda, oh boy, this is another one I need to be very careful about, because this is the Wind Waker Zelda, who is my personal favorite Zelda out of all of them. And Wind Waker is my favorite Zelda game, and I literally could talk about Wind Waker for hours. So I'm going to try really hard to keep myself under wraps here. But I do have a lot to say. I would put Wind Waker Zelda in the agency. In my Zelda, it's more likely than you think. A lot of people criticize this Zelda because she starts off as an active character in the story as Tetra, the pirate captain. And then halfway through the game, she is revealed as Zelda and then immediately shoved in a basement and then spends the rest of the game not doing anything. And like, I agree that that isn't the best, but I'm not gonna lie, I think this is severely misinterpreted and misunderstood within the narrative of Wind Waker, which is part of why I think this Zelda is incredible, and I really had to kind of get into the story of Wind Waker a little bit to explain why she is an actual good character in the story. the thesis statement of Wind Waker is a little bit tricky to understand because it's sort of underplayed within the narrative itself. But the whole point of Wind Waker is that this cycle of Hyrule and the cycle of Zelda being damseled and Ganon rising to power is a toxic and harmful cycle that needs to be broken. And what a lot of people don't seem to really register is that when it comes to both Zelda and the King of Red Lions, and even like Medley and Makar, is that their purpose isn't to be played straight, but rather to subvert these tropes that have existed in Zelda games up until this point. At least this is my personal interpretation. I could be off, but this is how I personally read the game. So if you disagree, I totally respect that. This is just, I want to explain my point here. A lot of people say that the King of Red Lions is a jerk and Zelda is useless and those make the game bad, but that's kind of regarding these points as flaws without realizing that they're not flaws, they're kind of the point. Like, the King of Red Lions is a jerk. He's within the narrative of Wind Waker. He is the secondary antagonist because Ganondorf is trying to bring Hyrule back and destroy the lives of the people on the Great Sea in a way to seek out what he feels is his rightful power. And the King of Red Lions is literally doing the same exact thing, and it's not a good thing to do. The people on the Great Sea have lives, and they have like a full thriving ecosystem. Everything might not be like peaceful and happy all the time, but this is like, if you look at every single other Zelda game before this and then look at this game, this is the most peaceful Hyrule has ever been. The Rito and the Hylians and the people of Outset Island and the people of Windfall all have this interconnected community, and the Koroks in the Forest Haven are trying to rebuild the land, and like everybody is working together. And in every other Zelda game, the land is being destroyed by war. Ocarina of Time takes place right after a civil war that has decimated Hyrule, and all of the races are completely isolated from each other and don't trust each other. And A Link to the Past and the originals Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2 are all taking place in times when Hyrule is in a massive state of decline. And the cause of this is the existence of Hyrule and the existence of the Triforce, because the mere existence of these artifacts and like this system, this monarchy, is what's causing the constant strife. If there wasn't a Triforce and there wasn't a Hyrule, then there wouldn't be constant war and devastation and destruction, and Zelda wouldn't be constantly relegated to this damsel role because she would be able to like live freely. And the point of Wind Waker is this: without the existence of Hyrule or the Triforce or this like antiquated system of like just traditional values that really don't serve any purpose in the world, Zelda is allowed to be a free and like a free character with full agency. She's a pirate captain. She's surrounded by a crew who cares about her deeply and is loyal to her and would do anything for her. She has friends in the form of Link and the Rito, and she can travel the world as much as she wants, and she can do whatever she'd like. And she's an incredible character. She drives the plot forward. She's the one who brings Link to the Forsaken Fortress. She lets Link like steal the bombs from her ship because she's smart, and she's like, she knows what he's doing and she lets him do it. Like, it's not just that he sneaks into the pirate ship and steals the bombs from her because he's crafty. She sees him and she's like, hey, I know what's going on. I'm gonna distract my pirates and let him do his thing. It's like, she's an actual really cool and interesting and smart and strong character. Partway through the game, when she's revealed to be Zelda, it's I've seen people criticize this as trying to do the same thing as Ocarina of Time Zelda, where in Ocarina of Time, when Sheik is revealed to be Zelda, it's like this twist where it turns out that this character who you've known all along is actually Princess Zelda. And people have criticized Wind Waker Zelda for doing the same thing by being like, oh hey, it's Tetra, but she's actually Zelda. But within the context of the story itself, it's not the same thing. It's actually literally the exact opposite. Where in Ocarina of Time, the revelation that Sheik is Zelda is one of empowerment and one of reclaimed agency, where Zelda is this princess who has to flee for her life, and then she decides to take into her agency and her power into her own hands and disguise herself as Sheik and help Link. And then when it's revealed that she's Zelda, it's a moment of empowerment when you when you realize how powerful and strong she is, that how even though she's being actively hunted down, she's playing this active role within the story. In Wind Waker, it's literally the opposite. Like, it's kind of unclear within the narrative itself, but it's kind of implied that Tetra doesn't even know who Zelda is or what Hyrule is to some extent. And when Tetra is revealed to be Zelda, it's not on her own terms. It's by the King of Red Lions, who is forcing this revelation onto her. And the King of Red Lions, who is this secondary antagonist, who is like this symbol of harmful ideology being perpetuated throughout the world when it doesn't need to exist, is the one who strips Zelda of her agency and of her power against her will. And it's not supposed to be this moment of like empowerment for Tetra. It's supposed to be a moment of disempowerment, because it's an indictment of the King of Red Lions and this harmful mindset. Like, Sheik reveals themselves to be Zelda, and Tetra is revealed to be Zelda. There is a very marked difference here. Oh my god, I swear I'm almost done. I'm sorry, I could talk about this for literal hours. One of the most important things within this story that you need to like be aware of is that right before Tetra is revealed to be Zelda and locked in a basement, she confronts Ganondorf in the Forsaken Fortress, and she is outpowered by him. He is stronger than her. He tries to capture her because he realizes that she's Zelda, but she actually escapes from him in the Forsaken Fortress. And the reason she escapes from him is because she has this community of people around her who are able to help and protect her, and they choose to help and protect her because they care about her. And it's like kind of a big deal. The Rito come and swoop her away. She's able to escape from Ganondorf because of the Great Sea. He can't cross the Great Sea. He's rooted on land. And so it's actually significantly safer for Zelda to be on the surface of the Great Sea, surrounded by people who are willing to protect her, with the ability to freely sail and get away from Ganondorf and remain as an active player within the game world. But the King of Red Lions is the one who takes Zelda to Hyrule, strips her power, strips her agency, and locks her in a basement, in the basement of Hyrule Castle, which the very first time that you see Hyrule Castle, it's been completely taken over by Ganondorf. It's like, this is so obviously a stupid and bad plan, and it's clear that Zelda is in imminent danger by being locked in the basement of the castle that Ganondorf has already taken over. But it's not a stupid plan because the narrative is stupid. It's stupid because the King of Red Lions is stupid, and that's like the point of it. Oh my god. When she's revealed to be Zelda, she almost immediately changes personalities into being this meek and timid character, and again, this isn't supposed to be like the development of her character. This is supposed to be like shining a harsh light onto how this is a bad thing, about how she is now like helpless because she is Zelda, and she gets captured, and then you have to go save her. But at the end, when you confront Ganondorf on the top of Ganon's tower, when Zelda reawakens and chooses to help you fight Ganondorf, she's not doing it as Zelda. She's doing it as Tetra. And it's very clear because her personality goes back to her pirate captain, like, swanky, like, kind of charmingly brusque manner. It's hard to explain, but this is a moment to me where she is reclaiming her power from the King of Red Lions, and she is saying, I am Tetra, I can help Link, I am an active player, and I have agency. And she is the one who comes up with the plan to defeat Ganon again, where neither of them can land a hit on her, and she realizes, like, Link has a mirror shield, I have light arrows, hey, pick up what I'm putting down here, I'm gonna shoot my arrows at you, do you get it? And, like, it's her quick thinking and her, like, decision-making that helps defeat Ganon. And then the whole triumphant ending of Wind Waker is that she is now Tetra again, and she is the pirate captain sailing the open seas. And it's like, I have so many, like, thoughts and feelings about this character. And I may be particularly biased because Wind Waker is my favorite game, like, one of my favorite games of all time. But I think that people seriously underestimate how this character is used within the narrative. And The reason I wouldn't put her in absolute queen tier and I would put her a step down is because I do agree that it could have been handled a lot better. The fact that she is disenfranchised and that she basically spends half of the game locked in a basement is still kind of bad. Like, I won't really defend that choice. They had a lot of options as a way to do it better, but I still think that she is a good Zelda and a good character, and within the story of Wind Waker and the point, like the thesis statement of Wind Waker, she plays a very key role in expressing the themes and like the importance of the narrative of Wind Waker. And then there's Phantom Hourglass. Oh, I literally have to pretend that Phantom Hourglass doesn't exist. Like, I'm not even joking. I have to pretend that game doesn't exist because this is another Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons Zelda moment where they took this amazing character and at the very start of Phantom Hourglass, she's immediately damseled and then you have to save her at the end. It's so bad, like, I don't want to talk about it. She just lumped that Zelda in with the Oracle of Ages sequelitis Zelda, if you will. Whew, I've been talking for a while. The next Zelda chronologically is the Minish Cap Zelda. She is in the permission to do exactly one thing tier. This Zelda is bad, but she gets to do exactly one thing, so that's good for her. I would put her above the original Legend of Zelda because they actually, like, give her, like, a little bit of personality. It's nowhere near enough to put her higher on the ranking. You only get to talk to her for, like, 5 minutes at the start of Minish Cap before she's damseled, but she is the one who gives you your shield and teaches you how to use it. So she did one thing! Yay! And then at the end, she is technically the one who beats Vati, but you can't even, like, give her credit for that because the, like, wizard guy is the one who explains to her how to do it, and then she does it on his instructions. So she doesn't even get points for that. The one thing that she did was choose to get the shield and then give it to you. So that's it. Next Zelda is Twilight Princess, and oh boy, I am so disappointed. I don't even have the words for it. This Zelda is a borderline travesty coming off of the previous 3D Zeldas. Like, when it comes to this tier list, you kind of notice a clear divide that usually the 2D Zeldas are on the bottom of the list and the 3D Zeldas are at the top because 3D Zeldas are much more narrative focused and have a lot more story, while 2D Zeldas tend to be more simple and more about straightforward gameplay, and there are very few exceptions to this. But Twilight Princess Zelda is the one 3D Zelda that absolutely lands on the bottom half of the tier list. I would put her in There Was an Attempt, because there was an attempt. It wasn't a good one, but it's there. They try to do this clever subversion of Zelda being captured by, instead of her being captured against her will, she chooses to surrender, which is like, okay, she made an active choice for herself to give up and be captured. That's nice. It's a little bit more complicated than that because Zant was overpowering Hyrule and she didn't want any more casualties, and so she, as a leader, chose to surrender herself to save her people. So, like, sure. And that doesn't make her a good character, though. It really doesn't. And the only purpose that she really serves within the story of Twilight Princess is to give exposition to Link about what's going on, and then tell him what to do, and then partway through, when Midna is, like, dying, Zelda sacrifices herself to save Midna. And it's like, okay, that's another choice that she's made, but it's a self-destructive choice that she makes to save somebody else at the cost of her own person. Like, okay, she made two choices, so she has permission to do more than one thing. But then, like, despite this kind of subversion of letting her choose to be captured herself, at the end, she gets possessed by Ganondorf and is turned into like a puppet at his command, which is even worse than being captured to me, because not only is it that she's been captured, it's that she's literally been completely stripped of her ability to control her own body, and Ganondorf is the one controlling her and using her as a puppet, which is just like, oh my god, this is such a step backwards from like so much like that's happened previously in the series. And they try to do this like really cheap imitation of the Ocarina of Time finale, where during the Ocarina of Time finale, Zelda actually helps you fight Ganondorf and is on the, like, when you're fighting Ganon, she's on the outside of the ring of, like, flames that he summons, but then she actually, like, assists Link in the battle. And then they do the same thing in Twilight Princess, but Zelda's just kind of standing there, like, you can do it, buddy, you got this. It's like, why are you even here? Why is she even in this game? It's so... Twilight Princess continues this weird insistence on having a twist on Zelda, where, like, in Ocarina of Time, the twist is that Sheik is actually Zelda, and then in Wind Waker, there's a subversion of this, where the twist is that Tetra is Zelda, but it's, like, instead of giving her agency, it removes it. And then Twilight Princess tries to do a twist on this that's a bit more of, like, a, like, overarching narrative twist, where at the very start of the game, Midna refers to Zelda as the Twilight Princess, but then later it's revealed that Midna is the Twilight Princess. And so the twist is that Zelda doesn't matter, which, like, okay, I get that the point of Twilight Princess is that Midna is supposed to be, like, the main character who's getting all the development, and they did do a great job with Midna, but that doesn't really excuse the fact that Zelda, who is the namesake of the series, is just so unimportant and, like, useless in the story. And her personality is terrible. Like, she doesn't really have any personality. Her personality is just that she's super serious, and that's it. There's, like, nothing to her. It's just, it's disappointing. It's she's not the worst by far, but she's pretty low. Oh boy. We got another one! Woo! Alright, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, we have Spirit Tracks Zelda, which, oh my god, hear me out. Spirit Tracks Zelda, absolute queen, literal best Zelda in the entire series. Do not sleep on this Zelda. She is incredible. She is hands down better than every single other Zelda. Even though Tetra is my personal favorite, Spirit Tracks is the best Zelda, and, like, you literally can't argue with this. I mean, you can. I'm not, like, telling you that you can't have opinions, but, like, you literally can't argue with this. Like, the existence of Spirit Tracks aside, like, I hate Spirit Tracks. I actually really don't like that game for so many different reasons. I think it's kind of disrespectful to Wind Waker's legacy to have a sequel to Wind Waker be set in New Hyrule, where they reestablished the monarchy of Hyrule, when the whole point of Wind Waker was, like, removing the monarchy and, like, getting away from Hyrule, because Hyrule was, like, a toxic and bad thing. So, oh my god. I'm not talking about that, though. We're just talking about Zelda within the story. And this is not the same Zelda as the one in Wind Waker and Phantom Hourglass. So this is a different Zelda. This is her descendant. And it escapes the sequelitis Zelda syndrome. This one also has a very clever subversion of Zelda being captured, which is kind of like a running theme that you're going to see going forward. But in this game, Zelda is not captured, but rather her spirit is removed from her body, and her body is taken to be used in this summoning ritual for an evil demon to possess her and kind of use her body to, like, take over. And this is also, like, a clever subversion on the Twilight Princess possession thing, because, oh god, how do I explain this? So Zelda's body has been possessed, but Zelda herself is still an active player in the story because her spirit can still do things. And so she is actually the companion character in this game, which is so cool. This is the first Legend of Zelda game where Zelda not only is one of the main characters, but is also the companion character that you have throughout your entire adventure, which really gives her so much time to, like, shine and grow over the course of the story. And as a companion, not only does she do, like, a number of helpful things, but also she has the ability to possess evil phantoms and take control of them, which is, like, this complete inversion of the Twilight Princess Zelda that came right before this, where she actually like uses her unique abilities to help Link, and within Spirit Tracks she is a second controllable character. Everybody's talking about like Breath of the Wild 2, will Zelda finally be playable? Zelda's been playable this whole time. She's been playable in Spirit Tracks. Spirit Tracks Zelda is a mainline Zelda title in which Zelda is a playable character. This is like kind of a huge deal, and a lot of people sleep on this. And also within the story, not only is she like a great character with like a lot of depth and like a really good character arc, but she's also another Zelda who really drives the plot forward. Without Zelda, like, the story wouldn't happen. This is sort of in line with Ocarina of Time Zelda, where at the start of Spirit Tracks, Zelda is the one who says, like, something's going on, Chancellor Cole is acting really shifty, I know he's up to something, Link, help me get out of the castle so that I can confront him and try to stop him and see what's going on. And so Link helps Zelda escape because Zelda is the one who's driving the story forward. And then when she gets her body taken and she's a spirit and they need to restore the spirit tower, she's the one who's like, we're doing this, Link, get your butt in gear, follow me, we're getting stuff done today. Like, she's the one who drives the story forward. It's like really good. And her character arc is so incredible because she starts off as, it's an incredibly unique take on Zelda, where most other Zeldas are like, you have like the Ocarina of Time Zelda, who's kind of like innocent and naive but sort of strong-willed and like takes action and knows what to do. And then you have like the Wind Waker Zelda, who is more like feisty and like a pirate captain. And then Twilight Princess Zelda, who's very serious and takes her duties seriously. But Spirit Tracks Zelda is like this totally pampered and coddled like princess who's like so weak-willed and like kind of like, I hate to say this, but she's kind of pathetic. Like, she's scared of rats. She doesn't know what to do most of the time. She's like a cowardly, but then over the course of the game she takes action, and like you see her character develop from being this sort of like mild-mannered and like pampered spoiled princess into like this heroic and courageous figure who, like, oh my god, it makes me a little emotional to think about her character arc in Spirit Tracks. It's so good. Like, by the end of the game, she is so freaking brave, and the final boss of Spirit Tracks is you controlling Link and Zelda at the same time. It's not just Link fighting the final boss with Zelda helping, it's you are also playing as Zelda. She is actively fighting the final boss with Link, and when you deal the final blow, in most of the Zelda games, it's Link stabbing with the Master Sword and like dealing the final blow himself. But in this game, Link isn't strong enough to do it himself, and so Zelda actually runs up and the two of them do it together. The two of them deal the final blow at the same time. It's incredible. And then at the end, when they stand in that field and they start holding hands, it's like, you've earned this! You earned this! Yes, it's so good! Like, listen, I hate Spirit Tracks, but this Zelda is legitimately the shining standard that every Zelda from now on must be held to. Did I really just get a text? Well, I'm having like a crying rant about how much I love Princess Zelda. But yeah, Spirit Tracks Zelda, absolutely incredible. Impeccable. I would literally call her a perfect character. Like, you cannot sleep on her. Even though Spirit Tracks is garbage, this Zelda is like the best. Oh boy. I kind of want to leave this one to last, because the next one is the Skyward Sword Zelda. And I'm going to get so much hate for this. Like, I know I'm going to get so much hate for this. But this Zelda is a hot mess. She's a hot mess of a character. She's just not good. She's not a good character. I understand why people like her, because she does have like a cute and fun personality, and she has a nice dynamic with Link, but she was not done well. And listen, I'm not just saying this because I hate Skyward Sword. Like, Skyward Sword, I am very clearly on record as Skyward Sword being my least favorite Zelda game, except for Zelda 2. But Spirit Tracks is another one of my least favorite Zelda games, and I think that Zelda is impeccable, so this isn't just me being biased against this character. I genuinely think that she's really bad. So you spend the entire intro interacting with Zelda and getting to know her, and throughout the entire intro, her only like personality, motivation, character drive at all is that she has a crush on Link and she wants to date him. That is the only thing. Like, every other Zelda, even the ones, like, Twilight Princess Zelda does suck, but, like, she has character motivation and, like, a role outside of just being Link's saucy girlfriend. Like, she is a leader of a nation, and every decision that she makes is for the betterment of her nation. She makes these decisions as a leader. And while Skyward Sword doesn't really have Hyrule as, like, a nation for Zelda to lead, her father is the headmaster of the Knight Academy, so they could have very, very easily at least had her be like, I can't wait to, like, inherit running the Knight Academy from my father. I'm passionate about the defense of the people of Skyloft. But no, she doesn't. The only thing she cares about is Link. The only thing. Like, the entire intro is just her worrying about Link not meeting his goals, about her worrying about Link's safety, about her defending Link from bullies, about her talking about how they were such good childhood friends and about how much fun that they have together and how she's so happy that Link won the wing ceremony so that they could be together. It's like, girl, have, like, something outside of wanting a man. You have to have something else. And then throughout the rest of the story, she just keeps being awful. Like, she's just... So first off, she's not even there. You spend the entire game. Legitimately, this game is 40 hours long, and you spend, like, 38 of those hours trying to reunite with Zelda, which is infuriating. And then you keep running into her, and then, like, you have, like, one line of dialogue, and then she runs away from you again. And, like, I know that's not what's really going on, but it's, like, that's what it feels like. You don't see her from the intro until the end of the Earth Temple. And then you see her, and she's like, I'm sorry, Link, I have to go. And then she leaves through a portal. And then you don't see her again until after the mining facility. And then she's like, I need to escape. Link, take my harp. And then she escapes. And then you spend the entire, like, second act of the game trying to reunite with her. It's like you don't even see her. She's not a character in the story at all. And she's technically a driving force, but the driving force is that Link wants to reunite with her because they want to be boyfriend and girlfriend. It's so dumb. And even worse than that, they again try to subvert this Zelda being captured trope. But they do a terrible job of it. It's legitimately awful. So the whole subversion with Skyward Sword Zelda is that she doesn't get captured, but rather she chooses to seal herself to keep the seal on demise active. And it's like, okay, so you're physically removing yourself from the story so that you can keep this seal active so that Link can defeat demise. So, like, you're at least doing something, which is nice. But then, not only after doing this gets captured, but she gets captured twice. She's the only Zelda who gets kidnapped twice in the course of the story. She gets kidnapped in the Earth Temple and has to be saved by Impa. And you don't even see this happen. You get told that this happens by Impa. She's like, Zelda was kidnapped and you couldn't save her, so I had to save her. It's like, okay. And then at the end, after you defeat Demise and she releases herself from her seal, she gets captured again, and it's supposed to be this kind of like a dramatic story twist, but it's like the dumbest twist I've ever seen in a Zelda game, because oh my god, I can't. I get so angry thinking about this. So, in Ocarina of Time, when Zelda reveals herself, she gets captured and kidnapped by Ganondorf, and it works because she knows that she's in active danger, and she chooses to reveal herself to Link to reveal her plan and to explain things to him. In Skyward Sword, Girahim spends the entire game trying to find and capture Zelda so that he can use her in this resurrection ceremony for Demise. And everyone knows this. It's the entire, like, point of trying to save Zelda is that Girahim is after her and trying to use her to resurrect Demise. And then there's the Gate of Time, which goes back in time thousands of years or hundreds of years or something to when Demise has just been defeated. So everyone knows that this Gate of Time leads to a point in which Demise is still alive. And It's not even like a thing that you can consciously become unaware of, because it's this humongous, massive clicking ticking clock. I'm sorry, I'm like getting so mad I'm stuttering. It's this humongous giant fixture in the sealed temple that is impossible to miss. And even if you aren't looking at it, it's constantly going cluck, cluck, cluck. So even while you're having a conversation with somebody, you're hearing this massive like cog in the background, and everybody knows that not only is Girahim looking for Zelda to resurrect Demise, but there is this gigantic gate that leads to a point in which Demise is still alive, and everybody is acting like Zelda reawakens, and everyone's like, yay, we did it. And it's like, oh my god, it's legitimately so stupid. It's so stupid. I don't want to go on this whole rant about Skyward Sword as a story, because I'm already like, if you don't know this, I'm literally writing like a 3-hour review video about why I hate Skyward Sword. But when it comes specifically to Zelda, she is just so awful. She has no agency at all in the story. She gets kidnapped multiple times. And then there's this weird twist. So like every 3D Zelda game does this twist thing, right? Ocarina of Time Zelda, Sheik is Zelda. Wind Waker, Tetra is Zelda. Twilight Princess, Midna is the Twilight Princess. They try to do another like clever twist on this twist formula, but they bungle it so horribly, it kind of ruins the entire story. The twist in Skyward Sword is that Zelda is a reincarnation of the goddess Hylia. And the goddess Hylia concocted this like ridiculous master plan for defeating Demise, where she sets up all of these like ridiculously complex trials, and then chooses a hero to be her hero to go through these trials and prove that he's worthy in order to defeat Demise. But then part of her plan is also that she chooses to reincarnate herself as a human mortal so that she can seduce Link to trick him into doing what she wants, which has this weird effect of both making Zelda herself a pawn of someone else's scheme who has no agency, but also making her the one who made herself a pawn in her own scheme, but she also is actively manipulating and seducing Link to manipulate him into doing things for her. And then at the end, Link and Zelda end up together, and it's supposed to be this like triumphant moment of like the two of them being together, and it's like, no, this is weird, this is messed up. There's such a like disturbing power dynamic here that I have trouble explaining exactly why it upsets me so much. If you have like a CEO of a company who has this underling who they're actively trying to seduce and get to do things, that's majorly screwed up. And so when you have this goddess who is like actively using her power to manipulate and like trick Link into doing things for her, and then reincarnates herself as a mortal in order to seduce him, and then they end up together, that's not like a triumphant and happy romantic ending. That's weird. It's uncomfortable. It's disturbing. This Zelda is so bad. This Zelda is so bad. But like the thing is that despite the fact that she is so bad, like at least she still has her personality. You can't say that for every other Zelda underneath her. Like, she gets in the top 50% strictly by default, that every other Zelda is just, like, so much worse than this. Like, she isn't just a plot device. She has some thoughts. So, at least she has her personality. Oh my god, I need to stop talking about Skyward Sword. It literally gives me migraines. Okay, moving on. The next Zelda is actually one that I personally love dearly, but there isn't really much to say about her. The Link Between Worlds Zelda, I would very firmly put her in At Least I Still Have My Personality, and I would put her above Skyward Sword Zelda, just kind of like by default. So the Link Between Worlds Zelda actually has quite a bit of time at the start of the game, especially for a 2D Zelda, where you get to kind of know her and talk to her, and she kind of like gives Link advice and like helps him out a little bit. She doesn't do much, but she is there. And, like, her personality is just, it's so sweet and cute and precious, and I love her so much. She's so adorable. And, like, one of the things that I love about her is that her kindness is, like, a virtue here. It's a major part of her character. It's not just that she's nice. It's that when you look at the actual finale of Link Between Worlds, the choice that she makes at the end to use the power of the Triforce in order to restore Lorule, when the people of Lorule were trying to use her power to resurrect their own kingdom at the cost of hers. And she still, at the end, has the kindness and generosity to use her power to lift them up instead of trying to tear them down. And that is really what nails this Zelda for me, as she has a personality and it's very clearly defined. The ending of Link Between Worlds is genuinely one of the most touching endings in any Zelda game, and I cry like every time I play it. It's so good. And a major part of that is that Zelda, again, she's using her power to raise others who have harmed her, and that is something that you can't really say for most of the Zeldas, because they just kind of get captured and then get rescued and then use their power to defeat the villain. But this Zelda recognizes that her villain is more complex and is an actual person who is, like, hurting, and she wants to use her power to build them up instead of tear them down. And that really, even though she is mostly a damsel in the story, that really nails her as a good Zelda. She has her personality. Alright, the next couple Zeldas, definitely a major step up from pretty much everything except for the absolute queen tier. So the first one I want to talk about is the Hyrule Warriors Zelda, who I'm going to kind of lump together, sort of like how I did the Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, lumped together as the sequelitis Zeldas. This is sort of the spin-off Zelda. She doesn't just reflect Hyrule Warriors, but she also reflects games like Cadence of Hyrule. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but Wand of Gamelon. It is so depressing that the Zelda from Wand of Gamelon is, like, one of the best iterations of Zelda, simply by virtue that she is the active player in the story. She's the main character. She's the one who saves her kingdom and saves Link. She doesn't get captured. It's like, oh my god, this literal trash of it, like, this literal garbage game has the best Princess Zelda. It's so sad. But yes, Hyrule Warriors Zelda lands very squarely in the agency in my Zelda. It's more likely than you think, because the spin-off Zeldas really do a good job of making Zelda what people want from the main series Zelda. One thing that Zelda fans kind of, like, universally agree on, from my personal experience, I don't know if this is actually factual or not, but one thing that Zelda fans really kind of agree on is that Zelda is not handled very well, and we want more from her. That's why there's such an outcry for Breath of the Wild 2 to have Zelda as a playable character, and why there was so much, like, upset comments and backlash when the trailer for Breath of the Wild 2 shows her fall in a pit and then she never shows up again. It's like, no, please do something with her. But the spin-off Zeldas really give us what we want from her as a character. I would not put her in the absolute queen tier for any of them, because every single one of these Zeldas does have pretty major issues. Like, the Hyrule Warriors Zelda is playable and she's, like, takes an active part in the story, and that's great, but she's not really, like, important to the story. She doesn't have, like, much character depth or much of a character arc. She's more here as, like, she's doing something and she's not captured. That's great. And then, like, same thing with Cadence of Hyrule Zelda, where she doesn't really have, like, a personality, but she's taking an active role, and she's actually, like, active in the story, and that's good. But I can't really put her in absolute queen tier, because, like, it's definitely a major step up, but I personally feel like there needs to be a little bit more to these characters. I would firmly put all of these spin-off Zeldas underneath the Wind Waker Zelda. And then the final Zelda, the most recent one, is the Breath of the Wild Zelda. And I have some thoughts about her. The fact of the matter is that within the canonical mainline series, she is objectively one of the best handled Zeldas in the series. Like, it's very hard to argue that. Even among, like, the absolute queen tier, Ocarina of Time Zelda is captured. Spirit Tracks Zelda, her body was taken to be used by the villain, which is still, like, kind of being captured. This Zelda is the one who does not get captured, but instead seals herself within Hyrule Castle to keep Ganon at bay. It's not that Ganon has captured her, it's that she has captured Ganon, which again is like a clever inversion of the Zelda being captured trope, and I think possibly one of the most successful ones in terms of just like making her an active agent in the story and giving her like a role. And like when it comes to her personality, she is like there's something there. There really is something there. But I just personally found her really boring. And I know this is sort of like a subjective thing, but having a Zelda who is much more like scholarly and quiet and reflective is a Zelda that I can respect, but there's just nothing significant here. She has some dialogue at the start, and then you have your optional little like 30-second clips in your iPad that you can watch of her, and they do like a decent job of like really showing her personality and showing her like growing, warming up to Link over time. But there's just, I don't know how to explain it right, because like no matter what I say, it sounds like nitpicking, but the truth of the matter is that like even Wind Waker Zelda is like consistently like she's driving Link forward. She is the one who takes Link to the Forsaken Fortress. She is the one who helps Link get the bombs. She is the one who saves Link from the Forsaken Fortress a second time. She's the one who rescues his sister and takes her back to Outset Island. She's the one who comes up with a plan to defeat Ganon. Like, even though there are flaws with that Zelda, she's like constantly like doing things. And the Zelda in this game is kind of like failing to do anything. And I know that's the point of her character arc, and I feel kind of bad saying it, but her entire character arc is that she's just outright failing. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but like it's not the same as Ocarina of Time Zelda either, because she can't activate her latent powers, which is why Ganon rises to power in Breath of the Wild. So there is that sort of like guilt to it a little bit, but Ocarina of Time Zelda, her choices were what explicitly caused Ganon to rise to power, and she has to pay the price, and she has to make amends and make reparations for that. This Zelda, this pressure is put onto her, and she can't do it, and that is relatable, and that is understandable, but it's not like a choice that she's making. It's technically a flaw that she has, but then it's frustrating that her whole character arc is that she is not in touch with her spiritual side, and she needs to be in touch with her spiritual side in order to defeat Ganon, but her passion and her interest lies in science and lies in understanding this ancient technology and fiddling with this ancient technology and trying to understand the Sheikah Slate and trying to see what makes the Guardians work so that she can use her inherent skill set to fight Ganon on her own terms. But then at the end of her story arc, this is sort of invalidated because it isn't her like understanding of technology that really is what like her strengths aren't played to. It's not that she has her own interests and she's disrespected, but her interests are what leads to defeating Ganon. It's that she has to learn to set her interests aside and just do the thing that's expected of her. And it's like, I don't know how to put it into words. That just, it doesn't feel, it's not fulfilling in the same way. Do you understand? I hope it makes sense that, like, having this character whose arc is that her father is putting expectations on her that she can't meet because they're not playing to her skill set. And then her personal skill sets are invalidated because at the end she just has to do what her father wants. And it's like, no, that's not, no. Just no. I don't know. So I would put her in agency in my Zelda tier. Because, like, she's good. You can't deny that she is good. She is, like, doing things. She's taking control. She's the one who captures Ganon and uses her power to really aid Link. But it's just frustrating that it's not quite right. It doesn't quite sit right with me. And I would absolutely put her above the spin-off Zeldas, because the spin-off Zeldas usually don't have much of like a story importance. But this Zelda, she does have that aspect of a character arc to her, and so I would call her good. The one thing I'm going to talk about this with Breath of the Wild Zelda is that the sequel is coming out, and I am very concerned with the Legend of Zelda series track record of having the Zelda of a sequel, because Zelda within the first game has a fully defined character arc and serves a role in the story. Sequels don't really know what to do with her, and so they just kind of like make her a damsel or like remove her from the story. Like Majora's Mask is one of my favorite Zelda games of all time. I love that game. Legitimately amazing. Zelda didn't need to be there. Like, I wouldn't exactly call it a flaw, because I actually think it's sort of a good decision to just outright remove her from the story if she's not going to serve an important purpose. But if she's not going to serve an important purpose, and there's no reason for her to even be there in the first place, at least like Oracle of Ages and Phantom Hourglass Zeldas are both just straight up damsels, and it's just like, I am very concerned. I don't think that Nintendo is going to just straight up damsel Zelda in Breath of the Wild 2. She is, like, even though I personally have issues with her, she is one of the most beloved iterations of Zelda in this series. Like, she has a lot of acclaim. People really like her and really connect with her. And I don't think that Nintendo would just, like, shove her on the back burner or make her a damsel or remove her from the story. I want to hope that they'll do something with her, but it's just, I get so concerned when I think about, like, Phantom Hourglass Zelda. Wind Waker Zelda was, like, a really great character who was fantastic, and I loved her. And then Phantom Hourglass, they just didn't know what to do with her, so they just removed her completely from the story. They just made her a goal to achieve at the end. And it's like, I really don't want them to do the same thing with this game. I really don't. Looking at this list of Zeldas overall, it's very frustrating that so many of them, I would say everyone from at least I Still Have My Personality down just is not a good character. For the namesake of the series, and for being like 2021 and having like expectations at this point of like having a good female character, especially in a triple A series that's a narrative and story driven series, these characters are just there's only like a handful of Princess Zeldas that I would call good characters, and it's frustrating, and it makes me like really, I don't know what they're going to do. I want to have faith, but I don't know. I really don't, and it scares me. Please, Breath of the Wild 2, please do Zelda right. Please don't do her dirty. Please make her a character. You don't even need to, like, make her amazing. Like, I don't expect every Zelda to be as amazing as Spirit Tracks, even though she is the shining standard that every Zelda should be, like, held to. I don't think that means that they need to be, like, as amazing as her, but they need to at least be better than, like, Skyward Sword Zelda. They need to be better. Like, please do better. Please, Nintendo, please do better.